Welcome to the latest episode of the Low Production High Value Show, a show for and about entrepreneurs.
On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Robert Mendelson, a fractional CMO and founder of Fractional Pros Canada. And welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Andrew. It's fun to be on the other side of the mic for once, so thank you.
Yeah, it's good to be bounce back and forth. Well, I want to jump right in. And we met because of a fractional CMO event and the fractional CMO community. But to set the stage, what is your definition, or when someone asks about a fractional CMO, how do you describe the idea or the concept?
Sure. So just before that, quick little correction. We met at a Fractional Pros Canada event, which was not just fractional CMOs, but it's the whole fractional spectrum community in Canada, right? So it's limited to all fractionals, if that's
Thank you for the correction. Yes,
Okay.
Fractional Pros.
There you go.
And we're going to drill into that a little more deeply, but thanks for setting the stage. So let's broaden it out then from fractional CMO to how you maybe define the community, or how do you explain the community to prospective members and things like that?
Sure. No, it's a great question. And there's a lot of people who either have never heard of a fractional, have heard of fractional, but not sure what it means, or have their own idea of what fractional is. There's a few different definitions out there. So the traditional fractional in its most traditional form is very simply a C-suite level executive who's delivering strategic leadership and thought leadership, but on a fractional basis, on a part-time basis. That's what it is. So me, for example, I'm a fractional CMO. So what does that mean? It means when I have an engagement with a client, I am acting as if I am a full-time CMO with their company, meaning I am attending their C-suite meetings. I'm involved in all the C-level strategic decisions. And I am also not working for them 5 days a week. I am not in their office, hardly ever, if ever. I'm virtual, but I am delivering strategy. And I'm not delivering execution of strategy. I'm delivering strategy. And very often what happens is after the first, 60, 90 days of an engagement, I deliver the strategy. And then the client says, "Hey, Robert, this is great. Can you do this for us?" And that's where I have to re-explain that as a fractional CMO, I'm not here to do it. I can help make sure it gets done. I can oversee it. As the analogy often is, I'm the architect. I'm not the bricklayer, right? And so I can help if your team needs to be trained up. I can find people to train them. I can do maybe a little bit of training myself. I can help you find people to hire if you want to have an internal team. I can connect you with third-party resources, experts that can help do some of the execution. That's how I can play a role in the execution, but I'm really there for strategy and making sure that the company and the marketing team stays on track to be true to executing on that strategy.
How do you differentiate from what some people might do, which is mistakenly equated to consulting?
Right. Question I get very often as well. So a consultant is somebody who is going to be involved with the company typically on a very limited basis. They might be brought in for a very specific project. And often the consultant is going to get involved in the execution more often than a fractional would. Those are really the big differences. And again, the consultant is not coming in to guide the company on a holistic basis, on a high-level strategic basis. They're coming in for a specific purpose. Maybe it's, we want to launch this new division and we need somebody to come in and set up the foundation. Maybe they need somebody to help them figure out the strategy for that particular division, whereas a fractional would come in and be looking at maybe setting up the strategy for that division, but also as it makes sense to the whole company, the whole entity as a whole.
So we touched on it at the outset, and you talked about the Fractional Pros community, and now you've sort of distinguished between fractional versus consulting. When you think about the community that you founded, what was the catalyst for it? And talk to me a little bit about an idea now to a robust cross-Canada community that you have.
Sure. So January 1 this year, 2025, I'm sitting there, I'm on my phone, and it occurs to me that I have come across communities for fractionals online, but I had yet to come across a community for fractionals that was exclusively for Canadian fractional executives. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to create one. Being the entrepreneurial guy that I am, like, I guess I'll start one. Go on
What's
Facebook.
what's the worst that can happen?
What's the worst that can happen, right? It doesn't work. It's a big deal. So I go on Facebook, create the Fractional Pros Canada group, and that's it. Start reaching out to some fractional people I know in Canada, say, hey, just start this group, join it. And here we are, 11 months later, and we have over 1,000 members of the Fractional Pros Canada community. These are all fractionals in Canada, all kinds of fractionals. And it's really about sharing, learning, connecting, and referring. So those are kind of like the four pillars of the community. And it's like any other community, the more involved you get, the more you get out of it. The more you put in, the more you get out. So there's some people who aren't very involved. There's others who are showing up to our monthly virtual meetups on Zoom. They're showing up to our in-person meetups, which we do occasionally, like you did, Andrew.
Hmm.
There's people who are tuning into the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. And then there are those who are not doing any of that. And that's fine too. It's all up to you what you want to do. And so by getting involved to different degrees, you get more out of it. And that's really what I established it for. And the other thing that I hear from a lot of people in the community is a lot of fractionals are solopreneurs. They're working at home. I'm sitting here on my dining room table, right? There's no one else around here to talk to. There's not even a water cooler. There's just a sink and a coffee maker. So it's breaking that isolation, right? We're often working alone, and to be able to get together, even if it is mostly virtually, but with other people who are in exactly the same situation, facing the same similar challenges as all fractionals face, and just having a safe place and a community to share. That's another reason why I created the community, and just bring people together and make the fractional world a better place.
Well, as you've spent time as a fractional and in your conversations with members of the community, what have you seen, whether it's a shift in mindset, the perception, the appetite for hiring of a fractional resource? What have you seen yourself and or what you've heard from the community over the last few years as fractionals become part of the lexicon of marketing and operations and revenue building, etc.?
Right. Not just lexicon, I would even say toolkit. So first of all, the term fractional, the whole fractional thing in Canada is not as well known as our neighbors to the south. And
Right.
so there's still some education to be done. There's still a lot of business owners out there in Canada who have either never heard of fractionals, or they've heard of them, but they're not really sure what they do. And so they don't understand the value proposition, and that there's this other option available to them if they don't have the budget to hire a full-time C-level executive, or if maybe they're in a growth stage and just not there yet, or they need to downsize, right? A full-time C-level executive is probably eating up the biggest portion of the HR payroll. And maybe for whatever reason these days, I don't know, tariffs, they need to cut that bottom line. And they're like, how can I do this? I still need fractional leadership. I still need C-level leadership, but I can't afford the full-time C-level salary. Well, fractional is an answer to all of those questions. So what we're seeing now is there are companies who, again, they're downsizing because they're forced to because of the economics. There's also companies who are bringing in more AI, and some company we'll talk about AI, I'm sure, a little bit later.
Hmm.
There's companies who are downsizing because of AI, and so they're looking for, again, fractional leadership instead of full-time leadership for that reason as well. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. So it's more of a trend. It's getting more popular. It's getting more well known. And the other thing that a lot of businesses don't understand, there's a hybrid model too. You can have maybe a full-time CEO and a full-time COO. Maybe you only need a part-time CFO and a part-time CMO. Again, that's where fractionals can come in. And there are companies running on this hybrid model, and it works very well as well.
Well, and it also depends on the stage they're at. Just on the AI for a moment, in terms of what you've seen, are you seeing people? I mean, yes, there's a lot of chatter in the media about layoffs, but then there was this recent announcement about Shopify about AI literacy, and that no hire can happen unless you can justify that it can't be addressed with AI. So I'm wondering if you're seeing either maybe it's just a mix. It's less about layoffs, potentially more about how can we use AI to be more productive with existing resources. Again, to forego having to justify a budget for hire.
Right. So what I've been seeing, and I know a lot of fractionals are seeing, is companies who are feeling the pressure to get on the AI bandwagon, right? When AI came out, let's call it a couple years ago, when ChatGPT came on the scene, a lot of companies, and rightly so, took okay, we'll wait and see, right? We'll wait and see. Well, now we're 2 years in, and the feeling is, all right, I can't wait anymore. I got to make a move. But what's the move? And so there are those companies who are just jumping in and taking a shot and implementing AI without doing it the right way, right? What is the right way? The right way means think about the strategy first. Where do I need to put in the AI? Where can it fit in best in my business? And there's a whole, process and way to look at that and do that right. And so you have companies who are jumping right in. You have other companies who are taking the mindset, oh, well, I got ChatGPT 5 now. I don't need a marketing team. My marketing team, I've got ChatGPT. Well, those
Your
companies, guess
marketing
what?
team doesn't hallucinate.
Yeah, Well, well, there's ways for your ChatGPT not to hallucinate too, right? So, hey, good news. That company, they're going to save tons of money this year. But guess what's going to happen probably in 6 to 12 months from now? They're going to start seeing the after effects of having got rid of all the humans from the equation. It just doesn't work. So AI is one of those bright, shiny objects that really, if it's looked at right, it's another tool in your toolkit. It's something that should be implemented in every business, but it should be done in the right way. And there's a shift now moving from using just AI as, a chat GPT every day for everything, to AI workers that you actually implement into your company. Treat it as a worker. It's got to
Mhm.
fit culturally. It's got to have a defined role and responsibility. And like every other employee, it should be managed by a human.
I've someone I know, Jill Rowley. And this was before the rise of AI. Um, that's a phrase I love. A fool with a tool is still a fool. And so AI in the wrong hands or in hands that are ill-informed can be problematic. And I'm in your camp where it's define what you're trying to accomplish, determine whether or not AI can help with those objectives, and then figure out where and how. And sometimes we're looking at these AI tools that they're generalist tools, and then there's also task-specific tools, and then figuring out should it be a combination thereof. And I can fall into the trap just as easily as anybody else about the bright new shiny thing. But it still comes down to, is it going to take me more time to train this? Maybe it'll take more time up front to train this for now, but then I never have to, or I still manage it after that. But now it's a new resource that takes over that job going forward. Time will tell.
Yeah. To me, it shouldn't be rocket science to figure this out, right? It's, first of all, make sure you, first of all, as a company, know where you're going, right? What are your objectives for the next 90 days, the next 2 years? What's your strategy? Assuming you have that written out and laid out and agreed on, which a lot of companies don't, but let's say you do. The next step is, and marketing is often one of the first areas that companies will implement AI, because AI is great at writing content. So everybody's like, okay, ChatGPT can write all my content now. And yeah, it can write a lot of it, but not all of it. But it's looking at what are those activities that let's say your marketing team is spending the most time on, like list them out and then see, all right, which ones of these can easily be automated by using AI in some way? And then figure out the right way to do it and make sure you're doing it in a safe way where there's, you have the walls around for privacy, and you've actually paid for an account. You're not just telling an employee, hey, Sue, I want you to start using ChatGPT and write content for our blogs. And that's all you tell Sue. And the next thing you know, Sue has fed into ChatGPT the strategy documents and maybe some financial analysis and all it can to train ChatGPT to give it the right content. And now, next thing you know, all your most private, intimate details of your business are out there for the rest of the world to discover now
Oops.
or tomorrow. And Sue's in trouble. And so's your company.
Sue, can we have a quick chat?
Yeah, we have a quick chat and leave ChatGPT out of the room.
Well, and we found predominantly we use ChatGPT for analytics, brainstorming, ideation, Perplexity for research, Claude for writing, but we qualify that. Claude is, we think, the best at writing, but we don't use it for original authorship. We use it for derivative writing from content that was written by a human being. Still not comfortable with like relinquishing, and no matter what, no content goes out without a set of human eyes on it.
100%. 100%. I have strong writing skills, so I'm comfortable enough to give my favorite, I'm a big Gemini fan. So I'll give Gemini, here's what I'm thinking of, write something out for me. Then I take that, then I throw it into Word, and then I go edit it, and I make sure it sounds like me. I change words, I change sentences, I do some serious editing, but like 80% of that heavy lifting is already done.
Yeah.
And then the 20%, I put in my flavor and make it mine. And I feel really comfortable putting that kind of content out there. I don't feel like AI wrote it for me. I feel like it helped me write it. That's
Well,
okay.
I'm going through the exercise now. I've got a book. And so, like yourself, if you have enough historical content that you've written, source material on which to train it, and that it can learn your voice and tone and style quite well, then yeah, you can guide it. And I'm doing this process right now of writing blogs, but I'm guiding it, and it's still derived from the book. So again, derivative rather than authored from scratch. Editing, and then to your point, tweaking it, and maybe like that's not quite what I would say or how I would say it, and then you massage it, and it's ready for the world.
Yeah. And again, you just got to be comfortable with that. I mean, my girlfriend is an actress and she is very close to AI because she sees AI as nothing but a threat to taking her work away. She does some voiceover work. And I mean, yeah, guess what? That's going away. Translators, that's going away. These are all going to AI because AI is just that good. But that doesn't mean that she should be out of work. It means that she should be learning to use the tools and, oversee the final product because she knows what it should look like and sound like and feel like in the end. And man, I hope she's listening to this, but I'm sure she's not.
Well, I asked, I have another episode coming out with someone who'd written a book about AI. He's an industrial designer by training. His name is Alexander Manu, and he's a professor at OCAD University. And he had a book launch, and I asked him about whether or not AI would take the job of an industrial designer. And he said, no, absolutely not, because you still need the expertise to be able to look at a design and know whether it's viable, whether there'll be issues with it, to have that sort of discerning opinion. And I was on I'm part of an AI mastermind or user group, and some folks joined the group in one session from a Hollywood studio. And they were sharing how they were using AI. And it wasn't to replace performers, but it was for like location shooting and B-roll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so they're finding essentially these budgetary line items that, just like the checklist we were talking about before, is what are you trying to accomplish and where can AI help? And not the replacing of the performance of an actor, but, I can just write a prompt to say, give me a street scene of, New York City, this street, this time of day, slight rainfall or whatever, and Shazam, now I have my establishing shot kind of thing. And
yeah, we thought it was great when drones came along, and now you didn't have to rent a helicopter to do those shots. Right? Now you don't even need the drone.
But I know, to your girlfriend's point, I do respect it, and I have a degree in film production. I've got friends in the industry, and we potentially have a project coming up for another television series. That because we've done some in the past. But Yeah, if I'm a performer and it's my likeness, it's me. I own me. And so I want to control where and how it's used. But I can't help but think myself that we're sort of in a Napster era again, where, and I'm not saying what Napster did was good, but the byproduct is that we now have iTunes and Spotify and so on. So what does that mean? If we look at what transpired then, everybody dug their heels in. Napster was disruptive. I mean, OpenAI and Perplexity, they're in lawsuits because they've moved faster asking for forgiveness rather than permission.
Right.
And again, I'm not justifying it. That's just the reality. But fast forward, and it took 20 years for electricity to be adopted. So we're only 3 years into AI, really. What
Stunning.
what are we going to look like in 2035? I don't know. I mean,
Nobody knows. Nobody can even imagine it. Maybe AI can imagine it, but I don't think even it's so early. I don't think even it can imagine whatever it says is going to be wrong.
well, not to get too philosophical, but can AI imagine? Because it's just trained.
Well, I
right?
use it as a figure of speech, of course.
Right.
Of course.
Well, in your capacity with a marketing focus, you've coined the term random acts of marketing. Tell me what that looks like in a real business context, and can you share a kind of a before and after story?
Sure. So a random act of marketing. I mean, here's a good analogy. Imagine a lot of people have heard the term random acts of kindness. So
Right.
let's think about a random act of kindness. I'm walking on the sidewalk on the street, and I'm walking in front of a store, and I see somebody with bags in their arms, and they're struggling to open the door to get out of the store. I go and I hold the door open for them, and they pass through and they thank me because I just made their life easier. And in that 15 seconds, I helped them out a lot. Random act of kindness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's think about the same situation. And then I go back the next day and I'm like, you know what? I'll bet this happens over and over again every single day. So instead of holding the door open, I'm going to put in a system that automatically opens the door whenever it detects somebody in front of it. And now it's going to be a repeated helpful act that's going to happen on a regular basis because I thought about this doesn't just happen now. This happens constantly, right? I got strategic about it. Same thing with a random act of marketing. Random act of marketing could be, oh, hey, Easter's coming up. We should have a sale on our store, our online store. Let's send out some emails to our house list and tell people we're having a sale, and let's put some paid ads on Facebook, right? And they go and do this, and are they measuring the effects of it? Yeah. We're looking at our sales. Looks like we got a few extra sales, but like that's it. So this is a random act of marketing, which is completely reactive. It's not tied to any strategy that the company has. And when it comes to measuring it, they're not measuring it properly. They're just looking to see, do we get bump in sales? But they didn't dig in to see how many impressions did we get? How many clicks did we get? How many conversions did we get? What was our cost per click? Maybe they actually lost money on those extra sales. Maybe they're just not measuring that. So that's a random act of marketing. The opposite of random act of marketing is strategic marketing. It's just being strategic, thinking it through before you pull the trigger, lining things up, understanding, where you're going and how you're going to get there before you do anything.
Well, but in the two scenarios that you described, there's the opening the door for the person, which I'll call reactive, in the moment, not planned, situational. Then there's the Easter sending out an email example, more proactive, albeit not a lot of forethought. And so where I'm going with all it is, is there an element of, whether circumstantially or happenstance, identifying an unmet need or a pain point, maybe addressing it reactively in that moment, rather than, to your point, thinking about it strategically and saying, this isn't just a moment in time pain point, this is a pain that's recurring for many?
Let me put it another way. I had another client, and they sell, it's this type of generator, and the benefit of it is it plugs into your car. You don't need to fill it with any kind of fuel or gas or propane or however. I'm not a generator expert. I'm not quite
Right.
sure how they work, but the big thing of this one was you don't need any of that. You just plug it into your car battery basically, and that will power the generator. And then you run your car, you start your car, and that's how you do it. And he calls me up because there was a big ice storm coming, and he's like, "Oh, power lines are going down. Like, I want to get some press. So, I'm going to put together a press release and send it to all the radio stations and TV and newspapers, and get some press out of it." And I said to him, good luck. I'm sure you can write the press release, and I'm sure you can send it out to everybody. Do you have any established relationships with any of these people, any of these stations, any of these journalists? Long story short, he put a lot of effort into this. He built his list of who he's going to send it to. He wrote the press release. He sent it out. He spent hours doing it. He didn't get a single hit. He didn't get a single radio interview. He didn't get a single nothing, right? So this is just not well thought out. And this is reactive instead of being, you could say, well, it's proactive. He saw the storm coming. He saw the opportunity. But no, that's not really proactive. That's really reactive. Proactive is doing some planning for the year out, knowing there's a winter season in Canada and there's always an ice storm somewhere, and having a plan that's already made up for, okay, when an ice storm happens, what's our plan going to be? Oh, well, we're going to send out press releases. Great. So let's start building up some relationships with some journalists and some radio stations in the spring and the summer, so that by the time the winter comes along and the ice storm comes, now we're not doing the spray and pray. Now we're having very targeted, hey, John over the CCC, God knows what radio station, like, hey, you remember me? Yeah, you're the generator guy. Yeah, the ice storm coming. Oh yeah, let's get you on. People are going to want to know about this. Their stuff in their freezer is going to go bad. Like, that's how it goes. That is what strategic planning is all about.
Well, it's finding the entry point. The radio stations, so they have windows of time that they have to fill with content, but it has to be valuable to their listening. They're not. And someone was asking me the other day, so 30 years ago, I started my own e-commerce company selling menswear on the internet, and it was too soon. It was before Google, before Shopify, etc. And I didn't know what I was doing from a PR and marketing. I had some sense of marketing, but didn't know PR to save my life. But I had seen a small business writer in the Toronto Star, and I cold called her. And she just said, well, so what do you do? And I said, I have this e-commerce business selling menswear on the internet. And it was 1995. There was nothing like it out there. And it piqued her interest. And it's less important about my story, but I ended up getting coverage and a picture of me on the front page of the business section of the Toronto Star. But after that story went out, a competitor called them up and said, "No, you should do a story on us." And she said, there's no story. Like, the story's been told.
Done.
There's not. And I have a friend who does PR, and it comes down to, you need to give them a story they haven't told before. And,
Right.
and that's part of the strategy. And if it's just the same old, and a strategy is not, we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Everyone's going to say that.
That's
so
right.
What else you got?
That's right. That's right. You got to figure out where your angle is. But Andrew, it sounds like you got lucky.
I was extremely lucky.
Right. And sometimes you get lucky, but most of the time you don't.
No, I agree. I mean, I could have been the person who called them after the fact.
Right.
And gotten nowhere.
Right.
I was at the right place at the right time. And it was a unique situation because the story I had to share hadn't been told before. But now, like your generator client, I mean, the generator's a generator. But if he comes at it with an angle of helpful tips, and like the generator's not central to the story, advice from him as an expert is central to the story, and so on, then yeah, that's 1,000 times more strategic than just, hey, I got this generator, you should buy it.
Right. No, you don't talk about the generator. You talk about save the defrosting $100 steaks in your freezer. That's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Benefits, right?
We'll be back in a moment. And now, a word from our sponsor. Social media has become an imperative for almost every business. Discover how to successfully implement an effective social media strategy that is supported and integrated throughout every part of your organization with this essential book from our host, Andrew Jenkins, Social Media Marketing for Business, Scaling an Integrated Social Media Strategy Across Your Organization, is now available from Amazon or koganpage.com. Now, back to the show.
Well, that sort of leads me to that, the strategy of the right story, being the best answer, trusted advisor, educate and informative. When it comes to a business that's considering tapping into a fractional resource, what sort of checklist should they go through to evaluate whether they're ready for it, whether they need it, whether they should be allocating budget? If they're reflecting on their situation, what sort of flags should they be looking for? That kind of thing.
So, I mean, when it comes to marketing, we'll talk about a fractional CMO, for example. And this will apply to just about any position that a fractional could have in the C-suite. When I have an intro call with somebody who's like, I'm not sure, maybe I need a fractional, maybe not, let's hop on a call. I'm going to ask them questions and I'm going to say things like, so tell me about your scoreboard. What kind of metrics, KPIs are you measuring on a regular basis to know if your marketing is going in the right direction or not? Now, if they say to me, oh, well, we look at our sales and that tells us the story. Right away, I know they don't have a marketing strategy because they're looking at lagging indicators and maybe
they
they're
just
just
have the
getting lucky.
final chapter of the story.
Right. So right away, that's a tip off to me. Okay, either they don't realize they have no marketing strategy, which is even worse. I don't know if that's worse, or maybe they think they have a marketing strategy. That's worse. Realizing they don't have one is better. So there's
Well,
that.
you mean that they acknowledge their shortcomings?
They acknowledge the shortcomings. If the answer is, well, we measure our sales, what they say after that is important. Sometimes they're like, what other questions do you have? Versus, is that right? Is that what we should be doing? Right? If I hear that, then we can have a conversation where I can start explaining to them, well, not quite. That's a lagging indicator. That's going to tell you how your marketing efforts have done after you've spent the money and put the time in. But what are your leading indicators, right? If you're doing paid advertising, how many impressions are you getting? How many clicks, et cetera, and looking at some of those leading indicators, which can predict what your sales are going to be. And then we can start tweaking those and put together a strategy. So that's one thing. Another question I'll ask is, so I'm going to guess that in your financial department, your finances of your company, you have some controls in place, right? You tell people, this is the budget. You can't spend more than this. You're looking at probably at least a monthly, P&L. Is that right? Yeah, absolutely. We're doing that. Great. Are you doing the same kind of thing for your marketing? And usually there's a long pause and a bit of a, huh. So, right. Again, indicates they haven't thought about marketing in that way, and they should be. And again, they're approaching their financial strategy, right, from a strategic way. Are they approaching their marketing activities from the same kind of strategic way? So those are some of the questions I would ask, and the prospective client, the CEO, the founder, the owner can start thinking about those kinds of questions. And that can kind of make them start maybe thinking, maybe I should have a conversation with a fractional.
You sort of alluded to it in the example you gave where they kind of said, is that what we should be looking at? Which makes me think about this, I'll call it, sort of a frame of mind about openness, like a willingness to say, like, we don't know what we don't know, or we're not sure, or like, as you put it, should we be looking at X or Y? Does that kind of openness make for a better engagement for someone like yourself? A more richer collaboration, or?
Well, I mean, definitely, I think it's like with anything, when you're working with somebody who is open-minded, and is not just hiring you so that you can tell them what they want to hear or confirm what they think they know, then it's going to be a better outcome for everybody. And there are clients that you come across who are ready to pay the good money and deliver them the strategy. And then they look at it and they say, yeah, thanks, Robert. We're not going to do that. We're going to go in a different direction, right? We know our business better than you do.
Thanks
And
for stopping by.
it's like, well, I mean, I'm happy that you paid me. Like that's great. I got paid for it, but I feel like I just wasted your time and your money and mine as well, because I want to help you. And I've given you a strategy that's based on data. I've spoken with your buyers. I've done buyer interviews. I understand their journey. I understand how they're thinking, why they're buying from you. I've done a competitive analysis of your, landscape, of your competitive landscape. I know all this stuff about you. I have some data here. I have a business case that I'm presenting to you along with a strategy. And you're sitting there and telling me, now we're just going to do what we think is the right thing to do. And that's just a shame, and good luck to those guys. So yeah, having a open-minded thirst for learning and a client who understands that they don't know what they don't know is definitely the best client to work with.
Just to build on that, in terms of setting expectations or educating them on what they need to be prepared to do, like, is it tough love? Is it stretch goals? To use your example, this is about telling them what they don't want to hear, maybe, but they have to hear.
Well, hopefully that's why they've hired you, right? What they've done is they've hired an expert to come in and complement everything else going on in the business, to complement their strengths and their weaknesses, to kind of fill in the gaps, right? It's adding another expert to the team, and that's what the concept is. So hopefully that's the reason they've hired you. And if it is, then yeah, there might be some tough love conversations. There might be some conversations where I need to say to the CEO or the founder, whoever it is, look, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but if you continue in the same direction that the business is going in now, in 6 months, you're going to have serious issues. And here's why. And here's what I think you can do about it. And sometimes that's really tough for a CEO, maybe, who up until now has also been the CMO, to hear. But again, hopefully that's why they've reached out to me, because they realize they can't wear both hats. They can't be an expert at both things. And they understand they need to tap out of the CMO position and relegate it to somebody who that's all they do, and let the CEO do what they do best, which is being a CEO.
In those sorts of tough love conversations, or candid conversations, do they tend, from your perspective, do you strive to make them based in data? Like, we've run analysis, we've done research or whatever, and like you said, if you continue down this path in 6 months, here's the potential outcome, and it may not be the kind of outcome you want. Like, do you tend to take a always backed by data approach?
Yeah. I mean, that's what marketing's all about these days, right? Everything is so measurable now because of all the digital, all the AI. Everything is pretty much happening in the online space with some exceptions. So everything is not only more easily measured, but also can be measured in almost real time. So all marketing decisions should really be data driven, in the vast majority of cases these days. And so when having those conversations, there shouldn't be much excuse for somebody, a marketer, coming to the CEO and saying, "Here's what I think we should do," and the CEO says, "Okay, show me the business case for this. Where's the data to support it?" If you say, "Oh, well, I don't have that," then I would suggest that perhaps you're in the wrong profession.
Yeah, no, I'm with you in that marketing now, because so much of it is online, is so data rich. There really is no excuse not to be making informed decisions. Or what should you do? Stop doing, change what you're doing, etc. But there could be frustration during a client engagement when you present the data. You tell them, if you keep down this path, this is the potential outcome, and it's not necessarily a desirable one.
But one of the downsides of all the data also, of course, is that there's so much data that the classic analysis by paralysis is very easy to fall into. It's also very easy to measure the wrong things,
Mhm.
right? You got to really, that's again why you need to go back to your strategy. What's your goal? And then you back it out from there. Okay, what are the KPIs that we need to be measuring so that we know if we're getting closer to that goal or not? And then there's a whole discussion we can have about KPIs versus supporting metrics. A lot of companies don't know the difference. If you're measuring KPIs, there really shouldn't be more than two or three key metrics that you're measuring as KPIs. Often I'll come into a company with a marketing department and I'll say, what are you measuring? They'll show me, well, they'll give me a list of like 10 things they're measuring. Here's all the KPIs we're measuring. And then I have the conversation like, all right, of these 10 KPIs, here's the 2 or 3 that are really key. And the rest, they're just helping to explain those key performance indicators, those key metrics, if you want to use the word metrics for those. So there's a hierarchy and there's a way that they all work together. But it's important not to have too many KPIs on that scoreboard, because otherwise you're missing the big picture. And it's really important to understand what big picture is right for your business to be measuring.
Hmm. Is there, it may be an unfair question, are those 2 to 3 KPIs standardized across all of your client engagements, or is it the proverbial, it depends?
If every business was the same, they'd be standardized. But guess what? Every business is different.
Right.
So the KPIs for every business is going to be different, right?
Well,
So
also what they prioritize, right?
exactly. All right. If you have a company and your priority is get more customers, then you're not measuring revenue, you're measuring customer acquisition and all the metrics that go around that. If your goal is increase profit, you're not measuring customer acquisition necessarily. You might be looking at average order values. How do we get those to go up? How do
Yeah.
we
Retention,
get our
churn,
right
etc.
our cost per conversion and customer acquisition costs? So it really depends on what your priorities are, and those can change. Right? We can come in and put together a 2-year plan, and in the first 90 days we discover revenue is the priority, and at the end of 90 days something happens. We discover, you know what? Where it's great, our revenues doubled, but our profit has gone down by 10%. So things are not going in the right direction. So now we're going to focus on profitability. So you change things around, you pivot the strategy, you pivot the scoreboard. That, a business is a living, breathing thing. The metrics, the key metrics that you want to measure and the KPIs are going to change consequentially as well. I'm thinking in French, en conséquence. That's the curse of living in Montreal. There's French words that creep into my brain before the English ones. And
It's
when
all
I'm
right.
not talking to a bilingual Montreal audience, I have to make sure I keep it in English. It's always a challenge.
Totally understand. Not to worry. But just on the KPIs and analytics, and let's link it to AI.
Mhm.
In the work that you're doing with AI, is it a combination of, I'll call it, compiling the analytics, distilling down to the actual insights? Where and how do you think AI is helping you as a fractional resource?
I mean, so many ways. When it comes to analytics and data analysis, AI is great for that. What before you take the spreadsheet, you take the monthly financials and you pour through them, and I'd spend 2 hours going through each line item and trying to figure out what's the story this is telling me. Well, now I just feed it to my favorite AI, and it can instantly identify trends and things that I might have missed or might have taken me an hour to figure out before. So there's a big time saver there. But again, you need to go back and double check, make sure what it's telling you is right. Make sure you agree with the story it's telling you, and make sure it has the right context, because maybe it's telling you, well, there's a downward trend in your sales. And maybe I look at that and I'm like, yeah, that's fine because I don't care about sales. I'm looking at profitability for this month. So next, right? So you got to, again, that's why you need the human involved. But other ways where AI is helping right now in the marketing department, like we said, content generation is a big one. I'm working with YourCMO.ai, which is kind of like the brother of the YourCMO fractional CMO marketing system that I run my practice on. They've built out a AI team, an AI department. They have 3 full-time engineers working on just building AI agents and AI workflows. And we can talk about, what the differences are of those. But to give you an example, there's an AI-driven content generation workflow that's been built now. So we could, for example, once we're done recording this podcast, we can feed the MP4 into that content engine, and it will then take that and it will come back to us and say, all right, here are 5 of the key topics that were discussed during the podcast. Would you like me to turn any of these into written content? And what kind of written content would you like? Would you like it for LinkedIn? Would you like it for a blog? Would you like it for email newsletters? You need 200 words or 2,000 words? What's the tone of voice? who's the customer, the buyer, the intended audience is going to read this, and it will go and generate all these right at the push of a button. It can also, spit out different video clips and all that fun stuff. And so this is a big time saver. This is something that can literally replace a person that might have a full-time job as sitting there writing content, and maybe they're writing content and having ChatGPT help them. Well, this is even better. And now that same person, don't get rid of them, but now what that person is going to do instead is review the outputs of this content engine, and that person is going to have free time to do some other things that are going to be higher value, hopefully more strategic activities that can bring more value to the company than what they've been doing up until now, which has just been generating content.
Well, they can, to your point, be more strategic. They can be looking at content planning. They can be looking at the analytics from past content to inform, oh, okay, these themes worked well. These themes not so much. This format worked better than this format, etc. And we hold meetings like this using the same technology we're using to record this with members of the leadership team or subject matter experts within our client organizations. And we ask a half an hour of their time. And to them, it's a half an hour conversation. And then we let them go on their merry way, and we turn that 30-minute conversation into video clips, audiograms, pull quote graphics, and blogs.
Exactly.
And so it's painless to them because it was a conversation, but then to your point, we're being strategic with that 30-minute recording.
Yep, that's exactly it. That's exactly what we do. And we're certainly not the only ones doing it. And everybody should, any business, I can't think of any business that doesn't need to produce content, right? Content, at worst, it's a top of funnel activity that every business should be engaged in. And at best, there's some companies who they make their living off of selling content. So in either case, and anywhere in between, every business should be looking at having AI involved in some aspect of content generation. And with agentic workflows now, it should be doing 80% plus of that heavy lifting that maybe somebody or a team of people were doing before.
We like to say content is the beast that must be fed. And I was just giving a presentation at an accounting conference, and I showed them how I used one prompt to conduct research about individuals and small business, and where their anxiousness, frustrations were, whatever, or questions they're asking as it pertained to income tax. And then I got the results of that research. I put it into Gamma, turned it into a presentation, put it into put a thing into Quad, turned it into a PowerPoint. While it was still in Perplexity, I asked it to create an infographic. Same resulting research, 3 different forms of content with the click of a button.
Yep. Yep. Then we could talk about the whole my AI is talking to your AI, all the slop this is the new buzzword for the year is slop, all the AI generated content that is just clogging
Sora,
up.
especially.
Yeah, it's just clogging everything up. So, yeah.
Well, that leads me to a question for you. I'm in the camp that quality content will still win out. There'll be tons of content because of we're like now everyone can be a content creator to some degree, but it's like anything. The good stuff finds an audience, and the bad stuff just becomes slop noise, and people ignore it, but they find that diamond in the rough. Is that a fair statement? Or
100%. 100%. And I think also what's going to set some content apart from others is going beyond just the contents of the content, but how it's delivered, right? The Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message, drilled into my head in 3 years of communication studies at Concordia here in Montreal. You're right. Medium is the message. I think what we're doing here on camera podcasting is becoming more and more popular. There's a trend. People are starting to watch podcasts because they want to see the people talking. And I would suggest that as AI continues to advance, people are going to want to do that more and more because they're going to want to know, am I listening to AI or they're actually real people talking? Right.
Oh, for sure.
It's going to get harder and harder to tell. So, yeah.
Well, and I saw a quote from Stephen Bartlett, who's the host of the Diary of a CEO podcast, and he talked about how they were audio only when they launched in 2017, and then in 2019, I think 2019, they went to video as well. And he has credited the move to video for its explosive growth and for it to reach the heights that it has as a podcast. Now, I mean, he's a media company, and there's all this peripheral stuff going on. And even, Conan O'Brien has joked about how he used to have a TV show, then he started a podcast, and then they said, people want to see a bit of video. So then they make a bit of video. Now they want to see full episodes of video. Oh, now they want to see you do a live tour in a theater. And suddenly it's like, aren't we going, isn't this a TV show all over again kind of thing? But the thing is, I think Neil Patel talked about how the number of blogs that are out there, and people think, oh, everyone seems to have a podcast. It's not true. Nowhere near the number of blogs that are out there and so on. So there's still a lot of upside, and it's an inexpensive thing to produce. There's time to be allocated, but the folks behind the Pivot podcast, and they're going to make $20 million on their podcast, and with a staff of 15. And then you have a show on CNN that doesn't have the same size audience and has 200 people staffing it. So we're in a different era now.
So Andrew, how big is your staff, and how many millions are you making this year?
I've never done, I knew that question was
happy to answer the question as well.
Sure. I'm making $0 from my podcast that I know of, because I'm not measuring, we don't have sponsors. This is a selfish endeavor for me. I like talking to entrepreneurs and other marketers. But as I was highlighting to the accounting audience, something I started, 2+ years ago, the thousands of people I've reached because of this podcast, especially in like the US as my dominant audience, that's the audience I want. And it came about because of the podcast. So it's 2 episodes a month. It's 2 hours of my time. And then my team helps with post-production, and we share it in social. And it's serving my objectives. And for that, I'm completely satisfied. So I don't know if it's been the same experience for you.
Yeah. I mean, for me, so early 90s, when I got out of communications, my first career was in radio. I was working in, you know where Coburg is? Coburg, Ontario. It's about an hour east of Toronto.
Yep. No, I've been there a few times.
Well, there you go. So back in the early 90s, I was on the air on 1450 AM CHUC, playing the best of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and today. And that was what I did for the first few years of my life in the early 90s. And
plus the commercials in between, right?
Commercials in between. Read the death announcements at 1:00 every day. And boy, if you messed up the pronunciation of a name, you got phone calls first from the upset family members and then from the station manager.
We got calls.
Yeah, it's like, oh, damn, that line is blinking. What did I say wrong now? And so now I've come back to podcasting, and I love being in front of a mic. It's just fun, and I love talking to people and hearing their stories. Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has something I can learn from them. Selfish endeavor, like you said, for me, it's completely selfish as well. And interestingly, I'm about 30 odd episodes in on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast, and random people are saying, yeah, I've listened to all the episodes, or I just listened to a couple, and the feedback has been flatteringly good, which is great, because I don't know how people are receiving this, right? I had one person, I think the ultimate flattery is, anybody ever told you this, Andrew? I couldn't sleep the other night, so I put your podcast on.
No, I haven't heard that one. But then you would try to find the silver lining in the comment? Or
well,
it's they could have put
it's a
backhanded compliment?
And they figured that I would put them back to sleep the fastest, I guess. Is that good?
Well, it's funny. It had never happened before. I actually, in high school, looked at a co-op position at a radio station. It ultimately didn't do it, but in the last month or so, I've had a number of people say to me that I had a voice that was good for audio. And I'm like, I'll take the compliment, but I was never expected. But I bow to you as a voice of radio. So, well, before we wrap things up, I wanted to ask another thing about a fractional engagement, and maybe it's more anecdotal than true or pure KPI. But for someone who's looking to hire a fractional resource, what sort of measures of success should they be thinking about, or be looking for?
Well, I mean, I think it's like anything else, begin with the end in mind. So if somebody is starting to search for a fractional, you got to ask the question, why? What need have they identified that they think a fractional can help them with? Right? What's the reason? When you go, I don't know, shopping to the supermarket, you don't just go because you're like, oh, I'm not sure what to do. I think I'll go to the supermarket. You're going there because you have a list of things to buy. And very often you come out buying more than you thought you would. Now, that's not really a great analogy for a fractional, because typically you're not going to go and buy more fractional than you intended to. But the concept is you're not just walking into this blindly, right? If finding a fractional, it's a mini project, right? You've decided you're going to hire a fractional. Well, now you're probably going to want to talk to a couple different ones. You're going to want to understand what kind of frameworks they work on, what kind of clients they have, what kind of industries they have expertise in, and all those kinds of good things. What does an engagement look like? What's it going to cost, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that those are the answers, is that somebody who's looking for a fractional should just think through what are you looking for and be prepared with your questions and what are the must-haves, what are the nice-to-haves. And if you don't know anything about fractionals and you don't even know where to start, that's fine too, right? It costs nothing to hop on a call and say, "Hey, Robert, I've heard about this fractional stuff. I might have seen you on a podcast, but I really don't know what this is all about. Can you take 20 minutes to explain to me what a fractional is?" Sure, let's start there, right?
Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah, explain it to like you're 5, no problem. Yeah, yeah.
But it's true, because, as you said, south of the border, much more familiar terminology, or I'll call it movement, less so here, but it's certainly garnering steam.
Yeah.
And so interesting times. So just as we come to a close, where can people find out more about the Fractional Pros community?
So if you're on Facebook, and most people are, but not everybody is, and I will say that when people ask me, why is the community hosted on Facebook? My answer is always, I find everything about Facebook toxic, except their community platform is still the best one I found out there. So you can find the Fractional Pros Canada Facebook group on Facebook. In the group section, just search for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find the Fractional Pros Canada podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms. And you can find me on LinkedIn and just go from there.
Awesome. Well, listen, thanks for your time. I really enjoyed the conversation. And on behalf of the audience, I want to thank you for everything that you shared.
Well, thanks, Andrew. It's been a pleasure being here, and this was a lot of fun. And thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Low Production High Value Show. Be sure to give us a rating and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out Volterra at volterradigital.com to learn more about how they can support your social media marketing.